The magical world of Walt Disney Animation has amassed quite the following over the last century. Whether you're young or old, you really can never outgrow Disney. They've made movies we'll cherish for our entire lives. They're movies we want to share with our families time and time again. With such a long history and so many movies under their belt, it's no surprise that opinions on Disney vary drastically from person to person. Your favorite Disney movie could very well be another person's least favorite, and the inverse is of course true. But of all the unpopular Disney opinions that we've heard, which ones do we have to agree with, and which ones are we not on the same page as? I'm Kifinosi with Wicked Binge, and this is Disney Unpopular Opinions we love and hate. First on the chopping block is probably the most popular Disney hot take, that being that Disney should return to making hand-drawn movies. Many fans feel the computer-generated Disney animated movies just don't measure up to the look and feel of their hand-drawn classics, and that it's long past time they return to their roots. On this matter, we have to agree. Though we do enjoy a lot of Disney's computer-animated films, we feel there's a lot more to love about hand-drawn animation, which is why it's such a shame that Disney has more or less abandoned the medium.
Well, I've had enough nonsense.
Disney returning to hand-drawn animation is something that could only help the studio, not hurt it. We're slowly starting to get 2D animated films back into theaters, like the Bob's Burgers movie, so why wouldn't Disney jump onto that train? Nostalgia for the hand-animated classics is also at an all-time high, which is why we can't imagine the general public wouldn't be at least a bit interested in seeing Disney return to this format. Doing this could also help Disney stand out from their competitors even more. Everybody's doing 3D animated films, but not one is taking advantage of what 2D has to offer. Disney could change that very easily. We should also mention that we're not trying to say Disney shouldn't make computer-generated films, but rather that they should work with both forms of animation. Why would you not want to get the best of both worlds? Up next is an opinion that, despite being pretty unpopular, is still nonetheless frequently heard. This opinion is that The Lion King is overrated. Though many view it as Disney's masterpiece and a must-see in their catalog, there does exist a contingency of people who think it's a bit overhyped. Some can't stand the music, while others don't buy into the film's plot essentially being Hamlet, but with animals. So where do we stand on the matter? Well, we respectfully have to disagree, as we think The Lion King is entirely deserving of its place in Disney's legacy. Sure, the plot plays it safe and is relatively familiar, but is that truly a bad thing? Star Wars was a blend of westerns and samurai movies set in space, and that didn't stop it from being a smash hit. Really, we think the reason The Lion King has struck such a chord with audiences is because of how universal the story is, similar to something like Star Wars. It's not a folktale set in some particular civilization like a lot of other Disney movies are. It's just a story about a family told through wild animals. Anyone of any background can be engrossed in the story in a way that most Disney films just don't accomplish. We can understand why people don't like The Lion King, but we'd be lying if we didn't say we understood the film's appeal a lot more.
Then so be it.
Going from a Disney classic to one of their more recent offerings, it's time to talk about Ralph Breaks the Internet. Almost 4 years after its release, a lot of fans are still divided on the movie. Some see it as a worthy successor to the first, while others perceive it as little more than a cash grab. However, most fans can agree that if there's one thing Wreck-It Ralph 2 really needed, it was to be more original. Most felt the movie needed to be more in touch with its video game roots like the first film, rather than have the focus on the Disney franchises and the internet.
Princesses and cartoon characters, lame.
Quite frankly, we have some mixed feelings about this opinion. On the one hand, it's very strange that a movie based on a video game character doesn't really have anything to do with video games anymore. While we spent most of the first movie discovering and exploring the worlds of different arcade games, we see almost no new games in this one. It's all been replaced in favor of references to social media and other Disney properties. The internet element doesn't feel like a huge leap from the first one, but the Disney tie-ins do make the film seem rather soulless. It feels like an inclusion just to make sure people know that they are indeed watching a Disney movie. However, on the opposite side of things, we can commend Disney for trying to do something new with the sequel. If the movie were too much more of what the first Wreck-It Ralph was, people would be writing it off as unoriginal and formulaic. It would probably feel a lot like those old Disney direct-to-video sequels, and is that what anybody would want from a big-budget theatrical movie? While we credit Disney for doing something a little more original with this movie, we also don't believe they found the best place to take this series forward, forcing us to have a pretty mixed reaction to both the movie and this take. In the Disney animation fandom, it isn't uncommon to see people argue about which is better, 2D animation or 3D animation. For a lot of Disney purists, hand-drawn animation is a far superior form of animation when compared to its CG counterpart. People think of it as an art form that's more limitless and imaginative than what can be accomplished with computer animation. This is another one we have to agree on. We feel that 2D animation lets the uniqueness of an artist's style feel more apparent than the majority of CG animation. With computer animation, you're a lot more boxed in with what you can and can't do. The same cannot be said for hand-drawn works. You can see this perfectly in Disney's 2D and 3D movies. While their hand-drawn films employ a variety of different art styles and looks, their computer-animated movies all look about the same. The characters have similar body types, and you get the sense that all of the characters could be swapped out between movies and not much would look different. We also feel hand-drawn animation ages a lot better than 3D animation does. While not every aspect of classic Disney films has aged well, the animation always feels timeless. When you look at an older CG animated Disney film, like Chicken Little, for example, you definitely get an idea of when the movie was made. In conclusion, while we do enjoy a lot of CG animated Disney movies, when we have to choose between them and the hand-drawn classics, we're going with the 2D ones every day of the week. While people praise Disney and their animation, regardless of what style it's in, people are a lot harsher on their story structure. In the eyes of many, Disney movies are way too formulaic. They find a classic fairy tale, make it a musical, throw in some princesses, villains, and talking animals, and call it a day. Now, while we understand why so many hold this opinion, we'd be lying if we said we didn't have mixed feelings on the matter. We think this opinion does hold a lot of weight in regards to the films of the Disney Renaissance era and older classics like Snow White and Cinderella. Those films fit the Disney formula to a T. However, when you look at their more recent offerings, this is totally untrue. Do Wreck-It Ralph and Zootopia really fit into the established Disney formula? Even films that do feature some of these elements manage to stand out more than a lot of their older films do. Encanto is a musical, but does that mean it fits the formula? You also have to look at films like Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2, which are totally unlike the Disney formula simply by being sequels, something the studio has seldom ever done in their long history. So, while we understand why people think Disney movies are all the same, if you take a closer look at them as a whole, you'll see there are far more differences between them than similarities. If there's one thing every Disney fan seems to love, it's a good Disney villain. From Captain Hook to Scar, these characters remain some of the most popular in Disney's entire pantheon. However, for a lot of fans, the newer villains don't quite measure up to the iconic Disney villains from the days of old. This has led many to believe that the greatest weakness of modern Disney is its lack of compelling villains. A lot of viewers think Disney relies way too much on the surprise villain trope, where a character we thought was good turns out to be the real villain. This has made many of their recent villains feel a bit repetitive for a lot of fans, and this is yet another take that we have to agree with. The villains in modern Disney movies are, at their best, serviceable, and at their worst, completely unmemorable. And that's when they do include a villain at all. Some movies like Frozen 2 don't have a central antagonist that the hero must battle against. Other movies, such as the recent Encanto, chose to have their villains be more of a concept than an actual character. There isn't really a villain in the movie, with the main antagonist instead coming in the form of family trauma. We feel it's more than time for the classic mustache-twirling villains to come back to the world of Disney. While people tend to criticize Disney's modern villains, who is the one that everyone agrees is a great villain? Mother Gothel from Tangled, of course, and it makes sense as she's the villain that best embodies the characteristics of classic Disney villains.
Want me to be the bad guy? Fine.
It's rather surprising that Disney's not made more villains that are similar to her, especially considering she's far and away the most popular of the newer antagonists. Consider this a message to all future Disney villains. In a world of Hans and yokais, be a Mother Gothel. Now, while people love the Disney Renaissance era, and the majority seem to enjoy the more recent Disney movies, there does exist a period between these two that has somewhat been forgotten by time. That is the experimental era. This era saw Disney abandon the musical format they'd become known for, and attempt anything and everything. From buddy comedies to sci-fi adventures, they did it all. While the majority of fans look back on this era as something that's akin to a dark age, some fans think that the experimental era is underrated. It's not too uncommon to hear someone profess their love for The Emperor's New Groove, like me, or cite Atlantis as one of Disney's most underrated movies. For our money, we have mixed feelings regarding this era. Don't get it twisted, there's a lot to love about the experimental era. Movies like Lilo and Stitch, Atlantis, and The Emperor's New Groove are all among some of Disney's most underappreciated movies. You also have to give credit to this era for living up to its name. The experimental era was truly experimental, giving it a feeling unlike any other period in the studio studio's history. None of these films make us feel like the Disney of today would make them, and there's a lot of appeal in that. However, we'd be lying if we said this era was all sunshine and lollipops. While a lot of the films were indeed definitely great, there were as many that were, let's just say, not great. Movies like Chicken Little and Home on the Range are some of their absolute weakest films, and taint the whole era in our eyes. We also felt that in their attempt to find a new image for themselves, they kind of lost that Disney magic in a way. Some of their movies, like the aforementioned Chicken Little, felt more like Disney trying to chase trends instead of trying to carve an interesting path forward for themselves. When you watch that film, it's impossible to not think of it as Disney's answer to the many DreamWorks blockbusters of that time. So while we do enjoy a lot of Disney's output from this time, we can also understand why many of those movies aren't looked back on as classics. Coming back to Disney's modern era for a minute, it seems the two most beloved properties this era's given us are Frozen and Tangled. Being that the two feature princesses, musical numbers, and more similarities, the two are often compared quite frequently. When this happens, you usually hear people saying that Tangled is better than Frozen. These people will cite the characters, songs, and overall story of Tangled as having been better executed than they were in Frozen. Count us among this group, as we also agree that Tangled is better than Frozen. Tangled is a far more enjoyable watch from start to finish than its icy counterpart is. The characters of Rapunzel and Flynn have a lot more natural chemistry than pretty much any of the pairings in Frozen, and we feel the overall story is a lot less predictable than Frozen's is. Tangled's story isn't super shocking or anything like that, but it does take a few more twists than Frozen's does. We also think the villain of Tangled, Mother Gothel, is a lot more formidable and intimidating than Hans ever was.
You were willing to marry me just like that.
And if we had to talk about sidekicks, we're taking Pascal over Olaf all day, every day. Frozen isn't even close to being a bad movie, but it does get kind of dry and dull after the first few rewatches. That isn't even remotely true of Tangled, which is great no matter how many times you've watched it. While we enjoy both movies a lot, when push comes to shove, we have to go with Corona over Arendelle. While both Frozen and Tangled remain popular, one of Disney's films that's had quite the journey is Hercules. Though it's a favorite of the generation who watched it as children, there's a noticeable percentage of people who see Hercules as one of Disney's worst films. Even a look at the film's Rotten Tomatoes score will show you that it's not quite one of Disney's most well-received films. However, we intensely disagree with this opinion.
Don't even go there.
We'll go even as far as to say Hercules is one of Disney's best films. This film definitely doesn't match the expected feel and look of a Disney classic. This is what makes the film so great in our eyes, though. The art style of the movie, the way the musical numbers are presented, and the overall aesthetic feel unique to this movie. There isn't a Disney movie made before, nor since this one, that's anything like it. The characters are also very unlike the typical archetypes presented in Disney movies. Megara might be something of a damsel in distress, but her sharp personality is unique to her, and her alone. We also think the film's unique feel has made the movie stand out more and more as the years go by. In a time when Disney was following an extremely rigid formula, Hercules' reinvention of its archetype made it feel like the odd man out. Nowadays, however, Disney has mostly shed that particular formula, making Hercules seem like not nearly the outcast it once was. Now, it's seen as a great reinvention of a formula that was starting to show its age. If you thought you didn't like Hercules, well, guess again. There's never been a better time to bust out that dusty VHS copy and give it a rewatch. Who knows, you might just see in it exactly what we see. One of the more contentious debates regarding Disney movies surrounds the classic archetype of the sidekick. In Disney movies, these characters tend to be talking animals, act as comic relief, and are slapped all over the merchandise for their respective movie. While almost every one of Disney's movies has them, they aren't the most popular aspect of the movies in the eyes of Disney fans. A lot of fans believe that every single Disney sidekick is annoying. They see them as little more than walking toy advertisements, an element of the movie that wasn't included because the creator wanted them in, but because Disney executives feel that every movie needs them. While we think there certainly is some truth to this opinion, we're a little mixed on it ourselves. There have definitely been some Disney movies where the sidekicks felt shoehorned straight in. Probably the most egregious example is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, where the gargoyles feel completely at odds with the more realistic and serious nature of the story. However, there are also a lot of Disney movies where the sidekicks felt right at home. Timon and Pumbaa were perfect in The Lion King, and we cannot cannot imagine a version of the movie without those two in it. You also have the ever-necessary Genie in Aladdin, Pascal in Tangled, and Sebastian in The Little Mermaid, to name a few of the more memorable sidekicks from the films. Really, the inclusion of sidekicks itself isn't the problem, it just comes down to how they're used at the end of the day. All of these characters had the potential to feel unnecessary and forced, but many of them are just as iconic as the protagonists they followed around. You just need a great mind at the helm to mold the familiar archetype into something truly entertaining. When Walt Disney was still running things, he was notorious for one particular rule he had regarding his films: no sequels. Even all these years after his death, you can count on one hand the number of legitimate sequels Disney's made to their theatrical films. This has led many to believe that Disney should not make any sequels whatsoever. The fans who believe this tend to not just dislike the direct-to-video sequels that were all the rage throughout the 90s and early 2000s, but they also dislike the official sequels, like Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2. However, we have to disagree with this stance. While we aren't the biggest fans of the aforementioned movies, we think sequels can and should exist in Disney films. We don't think a Cinderella 2 nor a Snow White 2 should be in the cards, but we do think a second Tangled or Big Hero 6 could be a lot of fun. They aren't the most original concept, but there are some great things you can do with a sequel. A sequel can deepen the worlds and characters introduced in the first film, give us some new characters and concepts, and even make us look at what came before in a whole new light. As we mentioned earlier, they can also let the creators embark on completely uncharted territory. They won't have a familiar formula nor fairy tale to jump from, and will have to essentially create a story from scratch. That's really exciting in our eyes, and if the sequels don't measure up, that's fine, because we'll still always have the original. Overall, while we don't want to see Disney turn into some sort of sequel machine, we think there are a lot of merits to making a sequel that keeps us from thinking the whole concept is some sort of fruitless endeavor. We're wrapping this video up with what might be the most popular of all unpopular Disney opinions. That, of course, is the opinion that the Disney live-action remakes don't need to be made. Many Disney diehards believe it's fine to leave these films alone as their original animated versions, and by making these live-action editions or lifelike CGI remakes, they're only entertaining the idea that animation is a lesser form of art. As far as this opinion goes, we agree to a ridiculous extent. Though we don't completely dislike all of Disney's remakes, we stay firm in the belief that all of them feel completely unnecessary. Why sink so much money into remakes when all they'll ever be are pale imitations of the classics? We know the main market for these movies is simply nostalgia, and it sells, but at that point, why not simply re-release the originals into theaters? It would cost a lot less, and we're sure some money could be made from them. Really, the main problem with these adaptations is that they show you just how versatile animation is compared to live action. They unintentionally show you how restricting live action can be in a way animation never is. Take The Lion King, for example. This live action imitation version is so focused on realism that the animals never feel as alive nor expressive as their animated counterparts do. All this isn't to say that there aren't good live action adaptations of cartoons. Honestly, the Scooby-Doo films and Speed Racer were excellent at adapting their animated counterparts, but they managed to capture the spirit and essence of the source material in a way these Disney remakes never have. Maybe this will all change one day, but for now, we think we could go the rest of our lives without seeing another Disney remake. But let us know in the comments section if you agree or disagree with our opinions on these opinions, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos, but most importantly, stay wicked!